In a faraway kingdom, there was an orphaned young man who was looked down upon by other people because they believed that his skill was useless. In this world, every person was blessed with different abilities of the holy Laplace, but there were few who were not lucky enough to have strong and useful abilities. And one of the most believed to have a useless skill was the young man, named Fate Graphite. The story began when the goblins attacked a carriage that was on its way to Seafort Kingdom. Fortunately, the groups of warriors were also there, and they easily defeated the goblins. When this group returned to the capital, Fate overheard their conversation about goblin hunting, but he knew within himself that this kind of work was not for him. He had a useless skill called Gluttony, and this was the reason why his stomach would always make noise. In the afternoon, the Vlerick siblings and members of the Holy Knights, named Raphael, Hado, and Memel, arrived and approached him. They were the ones who would order Fate to do their job in guarding the palace, and as an exchange, they would give him a few coins. When Fate picked up the coins, Hado stepped on his hand and then kicked his stomach. But what he did was witnessed by another holy knight, named Roxy, who came there to stop them. Because of this, the Vlerick siblings were forced to leave, and Roxy immediately helped Fate. While Roxy was wiping Fate's face, he saw the displeased reaction on Raphael. Roxy told him to report to her in case the Vlerick siblings would come to him again and beat him. But he told her that he did not want her to get involved because he was worried about what they would do to her. After he ate in his favorite bar, the noise in his stomach still did not stop. So he started to feel envious of others, and wished that he was born with at least a useful skill. After a while, he saw some thieves who entered the palace. For this reason, he immediately went to Roxy to inform her. Roxy asked him to keep an eye on the area, then she quickly searched for the thieves. A few minutes later, he saw the thief and on its way out of the gate. He was about to run, but he thought of the trust that Roxy gave him, so he was forced to attack the thief. He immediately killed him, and that was the moment when his gluttony skill was activated. Apart from the increase in his stats, he also received additional identify and telepathy skills. A few moments later, Roxy came to him and immediately held his hand because of her concern for him. He was surprised when he heard her inner voice because of his telepathy skill. To show her gratitude for his help, Roxy offered him to work for them since she belonged to the known Heart family. At first, he was still worried because of the Vlerick siblings, but he also wanted to get away from them, so he accepted Roxy's offer. When he got home, he still could not believe on the changes in his stats. He thought that with the stats he had, he would be able to defeat the monsters. So the next morning, he went to the market to look for a weapon that he could use. But since he only had 2 pieces of silver coins, the shop owner made him choose among the swords that were old and defective. So he used Identify to find out the stats of each sword. He held the black sword and he liked it, but he still thought that he was considered useless by others. Suddenly, he was surprised when it spoke to him, and when he used the Identify, he found out that the name of this sword was Greed. It spoke again and the sword also knew that his skill was Gluttony. Fate was told by this sword to choose him because they had a lot in common. When he bought it, he immediately went to the goblin's lair to try it. For every goblin that he killed, there was also an increase in his skills. He fought many goblins for several hours, and he successfully defeated them all. He could not even believe in the increase on his stats, and on the added new skills. Aside from this, he noticed that his stomach was no longer rumbling. According to Greed, the Gluttony skill could steal other skills, and this was the reason why he was able to acquire the skills of those he had killed. It was also difficult for others to know this information because it was one of the skills that disobeyed the divine law. After he took the ears of the goblins, he traded them for money. Just a few moments later, he bumped into a man who was carrying a child. When the child touched him, he realized that she was asking for help. He immediately thought that this child had been kidnapped, so he decided to follow them. The child was taken to a warehouse, and Fate heard that this child would deliver to a holy knight to serve as its amusement. This child turned out to be Sahara from the church's orphanage, and the nuns were currently looking for her. When the kidnapper left for a while, Fate quickly approached Sahara. But when he released her, the kidnapper came back and was behind him. Greed knew that the enemy was thinking that he was stronger than Fate, so he told Fate of a plan he had in mind. They ran away first, and when they saw an opportunity, Fate attacked the enemy. The kidnapper was able to avoid this, but in Fate's next attack, he was able to destroy its weapon. When Fate asked him who was the holy knight that this man was referring to, he found out that it was Hado. When they came out of the warehouse, they ate first because they were both hungry. After they ate, Fate took Sahara to the church. On the other hand, at the bar where Fate would always have his dinner, the barkeeper and the old man discussed the death of Mason, who was also a holy knight and Roxy's father. This happened when he fought the divine dragon in Gallia. They knew that Roxy would take over as the head of the Hart family, but they were worried because Mason was the only one who could control the order among the holy knights, especially on the Valerics. The next morning, Fate headed to the Holy Knight district for his first day as a worker for the Hart family. When he saw the mansion of Roxy's family, he was so amazed at how big it was. After a while, Roxy met him, and then they went to her father's grave. That was the moment when he found out that Roxy's father had died in the Gallia. Gallia was a continent that was already infested with monsters. Fate was upset because he just learned about her father's death. A week had passed, and while Fate was talking to Mr. Oliver and Mr. Minerva, Roxy ordered the housemaid, named Haru, to call him. Roxy wanted to check if he was doing fine at work, but while he was talking to her, he was thinking about his stomach as if he was getting hungry faster than before. After a few moments, he suddenly felt dizzy and then he lost consciousness. When he woke up, he was in his room and he saw Roxy's letter on his desk telling him to rest until the next day. Then he spoke to Greed to ask him about the strange things that was happening in his body. Greed said that it was because he had already tasted the souls of those he defeated, and his body would automatically desire for more. It was indeed his destiny to devour souls until his last breath. And if he could not maintain it, he would lose control of his body and attack anyone who he would come across. And the sign that he was on his limit was the change in the color of his eye. In order to fill the need for Gluttony skill, they searched and killed more goblins. But even though he had killed a lot, it still was not enough. Because of this, they went to the Hobgoblin Forest to attack the other goblins there. When the color of his eyes returned to normal, he saw the Goblin King. When he looked at its stats and skills, he found out that it has a health regeneration skill. While it was busy eating, Fate took the opportunity to attack one of its arms. It tried to retaliate, but Fate did not waste any time and killed the monster easily. Apart from the fact that Fate got its skills, his stats also increased. So Greed told him that he could now access its first level. But in return, everything that Fate had saved since they met would be taken from him. Because he wanted that both of them would grow stronger, he agreed to this. When Greed got what he needed from him, it changed in form and became a magic bow. Coincidentally, there was a goblin not far from them, so Fate immediately tried Greed's new form. Then they took the Goblin King's ear and donated it to the church. One day, Fate caught Roxy, who was about to get out of the gate. So Roxy told him that she was going to do a secret inspection, which was the reason why she disguised herself as an ordinary citizen. Fate was about to return to his work, but Roxy thought of taking him with her in the inspection. She used the name Lexi, so people would not recognize her. When they came to the commercial district, they passed by the grape market. Roxy said that these were from their family's vineyard, and that was when she realized that she slipped and exposed her identity. Good thing that Greed thought of a way to make the salesman not suspicious of her. A few moments later, a holy knight came there, causing the people to feel troubled. Fate's stomach suddenly rumbled and made this holy knight angry after hearing it. When he approached them, Fate immediately apologized. But the holy knight was not satisfied because Fate's voice was weak and he could barely hear him. When he was about to kick Fate, Roxy intervened. The holy knight noticed that she seemed familiar, and the people were starting to notice her resemblance to Roxy. In this situation, she pretended to be Fate's girlfriend in order to get away from the prying eyes. When they passed through the jewelry store, they suddenly stopped because Roxy stared at those beautiful gems. There were also an ore for sale that might also contain precious stones, and it cost 10 coppers each. Fate noticed that Roxy liked one of the jewels, but she did not take it. Instead, she asked him to bring her to the warriors that he knew. They heard the two men talking about the person who donated the goblin ear to the church. Roxy immediately approached them because this was what she wanted to know. Fate found out that it was him whom Roxy wanted to investigate because other people were thinking that he was a monster. He took Roxy to the bar where he used to eat. They thought that Fate was dead, so when Ed came there, he was surprised to see him. They learned from the ad that the said wandering monster was a lich. He added that the Holy Knights were also taking action to deal with it. After hearing this, Fate was worried that Roxy might join the quest in the search to arrest him. When they finished eating, they went to a well-known blacksmith for Greed's maintenance. While they were walking and talking about the information that Roxy got, they saw the Valeric siblings who were bullying a child. Roxy ordered Fate to take the child, and Hato could do nothing when he recognized her. Then Roxy asked Raphael why she was not informed about the plan of the Holy Knights and the Lich. Raphael said that they did not bother her because she might still be mourning on the death of her father, and then they left. They found out that the boy got separated from his mother, so they helped him find his mother first. At night, Fate thought that he needed to find a way so that Roxy would not recognize him while he was killing the monsters. Greed suggested for him to use a mask, and the one they took had the ability to change anyone's view of him. He also saw the gem shop again, and this time, he bought an ore and gave it to Roxy. He used the identify to check what's inside, so when Roxy split it, it contained a gem similar to what she liked. One day, Roxy decided to take Fate to Heart's territory. She wanted him to experience picking the fresh grapes that the Heart's family was proud of. When they arrived at their house, they were greeted by her mother, named Aisha. After Roxy entered the house, she remembered the day when she became a holy knight. She promised to her father that she would do things that her father were doing as a holy knight. After a few minutes, they started picking the grapes from the vineyard. Fate talked to one of the grape harvesters of the family. He learned that Roxy did not just come home to help with the harvest, but she would also deal with the kobolds who were destroying the crops. In the afternoon, he saw a woman carrying a large weapon. He had a suspicion that she was not from Seafort, and when they met, she suddenly spoke to him. He was surprised to see that her eyes were the same as his, and he could not use the identify on her either. This woman said that she was looking for the kobolds, but she would lead them to Fate. So he asked Greed who this girl was, but the sword did not answer him directly. Roxy approached him, and she said that this girl was possibly a Galleon. Everyone knew that the monsters had killed all the Galleons, but there were rumors that few of them had survived. The next morning, the harvesters found the plants of grapes already damaged. So they began to hunt down the kobolds. After a few moments, they were surprised to see the big kobold. Because of this, Fate's half-starvation mode had been activated. When he looked at the big kobold stats, it turned out to be at level 50, and Greed mentioned that it was a crowned beast. They returned to the village to tell the residents to evacuate, and Roxy promised them that they should not worry because she would take care of the problem. But Greed knew that Roxy could not fight a crowned beast alone. Although Fate was not sure if he could defeat the monster, he still decided that he would fight too. So at night, he and Greed started to deal with them. Using the magic bow, he was able to reduce the number of the enemies. Then he used the sword to kill the others, but he knew it was not enough. When he rushed to the kobold's leader, it turned out that he had an attack ready. It was so strong that he was thrown away, so a kobold took the opportunity to attack him, but Fate just pretended to be hurt and attacked the enemy. After he killed the monster, he used Greed's first stage ultimate. It was called the Bloody Ptarmigan, and with its great strength, the leader of the kobolds was immediately dissolved. The next day, Roxy and the people could not believe it when they saw the dead kobolds, and the great damage caused by the Bloody Ptarmigan. But according to Roxy's suspicion, it might be done by the Galleon woman that they saw because she heard that they were stronger than the Holy Knights. On that day, they would return to the Holy Knight district, but before they left, Aisha talked to Fate. She begged Fate to support and take care of Roxy because she knew that she would not last long for her daughter. When they got back, Fate tried to fight his half-starvation mode, but killing the goblins were not enough to satisfy it. So he just covered one of his eyes which was still red, so that no one else could see it. He heard from Ad that Hato would lead the search to arrest him. He also learned that the expedition would start again in Gallia, and Raphael's group was pleased because Roxy would lead it. Meanwhile, Raphael and Melon planned to go to Tenburn for Raphael's research on immortality, and they reminded Hato to denounce the Lich. Fate even tried to stop Roxy, but she already made up her mind. He was angry at the things that the Valeric siblings were doing to Roxy, so he would make sure that they would get a taste of his punishment. That night, he was seen by Hato who was with other warriors. Hato had the rest of his companions attack him, but he easily defeated them. After witnessing the fight, Hato's other companions were so scared that they ran away. When they were alone, Fate took off his mask, and Hato could not believe how he got so strong. Before Fate attacked, he asked Greed if he could defeat a holy sword. Greed calmly said that Hato's holy sword would not work on him. When Hato attacked with his Grand Cross, Fate easily dodged it and immediately aimed to destroy Hato's holy sword. Hato's fear caused him to fall and he knew that he could not defeat his opponent. Fate pulled him up and then slammed Hato's face into a tree. Hato tried to beg for his life, but Fate just threw him away and used the bloody ptarmigan on him. Because of this, Hato's hands and feet were dismembered. Before Fate decided to kill him, he asked about Roxy's expedition to Gallia. He found out that Roxy had volunteered to do it, and Hato said that he could cancel it as long as he kept him alive. But Fate had no intention of letting him live because he also wanted to take revenge for the things they did to him before. After this, he got the Holy Sword technique skill, and Greed also reached his second level, which was a great scythe. When Roxy went off, she left a recommendation letter for Fate to become an employee of a lord's manor. She did this so that the Valeric siblings would no longer bother him. But Fate did not accept it because he intended to become a warrior. He decided to follow Roxy because he wanted to protect her. Meanwhile, a warrior who was close to Roxy, named Miria, volunteered to join the expedition. Aside from her, Mugan was also there because he wanted to avenge Roxy's father. While Mugan's daughter, named Rain, was studying the corpses of goblins that Fate had killed, her colleague noticed that the injuries sustained by these monsters did not come from normal arrows. Rain checked this on a book, and she was sure that it was from magic arrows. They also learned that it was from the Black Sword, which was one of the weapons of mortal sin. Rain did not know any other information about them yet, but she wanted to see weapons of mortal sin. The first town that Fate passed through was the town of Tetra, which was the town where he came from. He tried to ask if there was a carriage that would travel that day, but he was told to come back the next day. Since his stomach was noisy again, he looked for something to eat. Suddenly, when he went to a bar, he saw his childhood friend, named Set, and he was begging the warriors to help their village from the monsters. When Set was being oppressed by the warriors, Fate intervened, and with his strength, the warriors did not try to fight with him. Set was shocked when he found out that it was Fate who helped him. Fate also remembered what Set used to do to him when they were young. Those were also the times when he and his father were still together. But when his father died, the village chief, who was Set's father, kicked him out of the village. Set begged him to help their village. Since he also needed to get rid of monsters, he agreed to this. When they arrived at the village, Set's father still did not accept Fate. And if the monsters attacked that night, he wanted to use him as a sacrifice. When Set took him to his house, Fate found out that Set's wife was gone. Then Set started telling him the details about the monsters. After a few moments, Fate's stomach rumbled, so Set prepared him something to eat. Set's daughter approached him and gave him some candy. The food were served, and while they were eating, Fate suddenly became dizzy and lost consciousness. When Set's daughter mentioned about the candy that his grandfather had given to her, Set realized that his father was really serious about making Fate a sacrifice for the monsters. But after a while, the monsters also arrived, so Set immediately made a medicine for Fate to drink. When Fate felt better, he went out to face the monsters. The fire quickly consumed the other houses, and the monsters ate the people that they caught. Fate used the great scythe, so he quickly killed all the monsters, and got the fireball skill. But there was another remaining enemy, which was the leader of the monsters who had the fire resistance skill. The monster rushed at him, so Fate faced it fearlessly and successfully defeated it using the great scythe. Then he also got the fire resistance skill. Unfortunately, only Set and his daughter were left alive in the village. Fate knew that the land was not good in the area, so Set thought that he would look for a job in the town. Before Fate left the village, he visited his father's grave first. Then he made an agreement with the owner of the carriage that he would serve as his escort in exchange for 3 gold coins. But they were suddenly ambushed by a group of bandits on the road. When Fate got off, the owner of the carriage begged him not to leave him. The bandits were about to rush towards them when suddenly someone attacked them. It turned out to be the work of the Gallian woman that Fate saw when he was in the vineyard of Roxy's family. She also boarded the carriage, and that was when they talked to each other. This girl introduced herself with the name Mind, who also had the skill of deadly sin ref. She also knew Fate's gluttony skill and even about greed. When they arrived in Lancaster territory, they even caught up the sideshow of the Lord of Lancaster, named Rudolph. According to the owner of the carriage, he might be preparing for the arrival of Roxy. So Fate found out that he came early than Roxy's army. After they got the payment as an escort, Mind suddenly fell asleep. So he picked her up, and while they were looking for an inn, he noticed different marks on the necks of the people. When they found a place to stay, it was here that Greed mentioned to Fate that Mine's weapon was called Sloth, which was also one of the weapons of mortal sin. Then Greed also told him about the skills of deadly sin and the weapons of mortal sins. Among the 7, Gluttony was said to be the most sinful. So he reminded Fate that he needed to be strong because the gluttony might swallow him any time. At night, they went out to fight the Sandmen. They tried to augment the magic arrow with a fireball. They immediately defeated them, but it turned out that there were still more. When they consumed all of the enemies, Fate sensed a crowned beast in the distance. They went to it, and it was currently being fought by other warriors. When the monster attacked Fate, he countered it with the great scythe. Fate noticed that the core was trying to escape, so he quickly changed his weapon to the magic bow and used the bloody ptarmigan. Because of this, they completely defeated it, and Fate got the sandstorm skill. When he got back to the inn, he took Mine with him to exchange the sand golem that he defeated for gold coins. Rudolph suddenly came to him because he found out what Fate did. He wanted to take Fate and make him as his servant. But Mine immediately objected to this because she had seen Fate first. After what she said, Rudolph did not take it seriously, so Mine just hit him with her weapon. Fate knew that she had caused a big problem, so they quickly boarded the carriage to leave the place. While they were on the trip, Fate annoyed Mine for her being greedy, so she activated the sloth, causing it to get heavy and damage the carriage's wheels. While they were waiting for the carriage to be fixed, he and Mine entered a village that was not far from them. Fate noticed that this village seemed to be peaceful, so Greed thought that there might be a strong person guarding it. After a while, they saw an old man who was cleaning his sword. Fate asked him who was the village chief because they were planning to find a temporary place to stay. The old man turned out to be the village chief, and they also knew that he was a holy knight because of the holy sword that he was holding. The old man said that if they wanted to stay there, Fate must compete with him in a sword fight. Fate used the identify on him, but the old man also had identify skill. He agreed to a duel, but Fate was quickly defeated. He thought that they could not stay there because he lost in the duel, but this old man decided that they could still stay in the village in one condition. The old man wanted Fate to train under him. Since Fate did not see anything wrong with it, he agreed to this offer. Then he introduced himself, and the old man introduced himself as Aaron Barbados. When Mine arrived, Fate informed her that they already had a place to stay. Mine immediately took the opportunity to rest while Fate and Aaron started the training. Aaron first taught him how to fight without using any weapons. After a few moments, one of Fate's eyes turned red again, which Aaron noticed. It turned out that Fate's half-starvation mode was activated, causing him to be able to keep up with Aaron's moves. At night, while Aaron was out to get their food, Fate saw the family painting of Aaron on the wall. That was when he realized why Aaron wanted to train him, because he had a resemblance to his son. The next day, they practiced with the sword, but Fate would only use a wooden stick. Aaron wanted Fate to block the attack with this wood. When Aaron attacked, Fate successfully did it, so Aaron was amazed by him. At night while they were eating, Fate asked Aaron about the castle that was in the distance. So Aaron said that this castle used to be his. But 15 years ago, and while he was on a mission as a holy knight, the Lich Lord attacked their castle. Aaron knew that Fate had planned to go there, so he decided to come along, while Mine would watch over the village first. When they got to the castle, they fought the disciples of the Lich Lord outside. They went inside without difficulty, but when they got to the second floor, they were surprised to see people there. Aaron's wife, named Diana, and his son, Luke, were also there to greet him. Aaron was very happy with this, but Greed knew that it was just an illusion. When Aaron was about to give the souvenir that he promised to Luke, Luke suddenly attacked him. Fortunately, Aaron already knew this, and he was able to block it. He told Fate that he would take care of it, so Fate went ahead to find the Lich Lord. Fate quickly tracked down the Lich Lord, who immediately attacked him. After he destroyed its weapon, he was surrounded by corpses who were begging him to save them. Suddenly, Aaron came there and he used the Grand Cross. But he was still struggling to defeat the Lich Lord, so Fate took Luke's sword and the two of them combined their Grand Cross. After that, they finally defeated the Lich Lord and saved the corpses it controlled. The souls of Diana and Luke appeared to Aaron to make him feel at ease. Then he also gave the souvenir that he promised to Luke. The Lich Lord suddenly tried to attack Aaron, but Fate quickly stopped it. When they returned to the village, Aaron gave Mine a bag of coins for her effort in guarding the village. Then it was here that Aaron remembered that he had seen Mine 50 years ago when some monsters attacked their area. And her appearance was still the same as before, and nothing had changed. So Mine also mentioned that she was a phantom that could not die. Before Fate left, Aaron told him that if he finished what he had to do, he must come back because he had something important to say to him. While in Seafort, Raphael and Melon had returned with the Philosopher's Stone that had the ability to treat any kind of pain and injury. When their butler entered the room, they found out that Hato was dead. They learned that the one that killed Hato was not a lich, but a warrior. Just a few hours after Fate and Mine left, Roxy's group arrived at Hausen. They did not know that Fate and Aaron had already defeated the Lich Lord, so when they approached the castle, they were surprised that they did not feel any monsters there. Aaron appeared to them after a few moments, so Mugan knelt in recognition of him because Aaron was not only the head of the Barbados family, but he was also an expert swordsman who was known as the Blade of Light. Roxy was surprised that Aaron knew her, so Aaron said that Mason and Aisha were his best friends and he was the one who gave Roxy her name. Then they also found out that Aaron had defeated the Lich Lord with the help of a young man. When Roxy asked the name of the man that Aaron was referring to, he did not say it because Fate told him to keep it a secret for the meantime. Aaron knew that Roxy was going to the Gallia, so he thought that the Vlerics were the ones behind it. So Roxy said that she volunteered to do it, but Aaron knew that she was just manipulated during that time. When Roxy mentioned that she just inherited her father's ideal, it was the moment when Aaron found out that Mason was already dead. Because of this, he decided to teach Roxy how to fight the Gallia. Meanwhile, Mine took Fate where she was born. It was only a few moments before they saw the big cocoon that according to Greed was said to be a chimera. When they approached it, Fate saw that it was a chimera Haniel, but he could not see its skill. It turned out that Mine wanted to work with Fate to defeat it because of the soul-eating power of his gluttony. Mine attacked the cocoon to release the chimera, and Fate was surprised to see the woman in its chest who also had red eyes. She served as the core of the chimera that Mine wanted him to kill. When it attacked, they ran away, but soon Mine decided to retaliate. Then she followed it up with another attack, but it just regenerated. Mine attacked again, and it was stronger than her first attack. Greed said that this was the sloth's ability, it only became heavier with each stroke. The chimera regenerated again, and this time, it released new wings. Fate decided to use his half-starvation mode so that he could keep up in the battle. He successfully controlled it, and he could give Mine proper support in the fight. Suddenly, the chimera created a barrier, and when Fate tried the great scythe on it, it did not work. So he looked for its weak spot, and immediately targeted it. The chimera tried to escape, so Mine had Fate ride a sloth to throw him towards the chimera. Before he could get close to the chimera, he was able to activate the secret technique of the great scythe. He then targeted the chimera's core with the deadly inferno. Suddenly, the whole environment changed, so he thought that he had used telepathy. He saw Mine hugging the woman who resembled the core of the chimera. Because of Mine's sacrifice, Fate also begged her that if he ever lose control of himself, he wanted her to end his life too. Fate decided to go to Babylon while Mine was decided to stay because she still had things to do there. After a while, Greed got his level 3 form, and it was a magic shield. When Fate arrived at Babylon, Roxy came there too, so he immediately put on the mask. After a few moments, he suddenly felt something strange behind him, so he turned around. The next day, he saw different types of warriors who gathered in Babylon. Some of them were former members of the Holy Knights, and others hated the Holy Knights. Even the sinners, as long as they were strong, were accepted in this place because they could help fight against monsters, so Fate thought that it was a perfect place for him. Roxy was formally greeted by another Holy Knight, named Northern Alistair, who was temporarily assigned to Babylon's order after the death of Roxy's father. When Fate passed by in a store, Greed liked the scabbard that was on display. So they went inside, and when the owner looked at Greed, Fate found out that it cost 500 gold coins if he wanted a scabbard for Greed, and since he did not have the amount, he just left. Then he and his sword decided to kill the monsters from the Gallia to earn money for their expenses. When they arrived at the area, Fate immediately smelled the pungent smell. After a few moments, he saw many orcs approaching his way. Fate was about to fight them when the other warriors suddenly came to attack the orcs. They got ahead of him, but there was another group of orcs approaching, so he immediately attacked them. He just used the magic shield, and the monsters could do nothing against him. After they returned to Babylon to get the reward, the other warriors were surprised because he brought a lot of ears inside his bags. Suddenly, the warriors who fought other orcs earlier came there, and they claimed that they were the ones who defeated all the orcs. He got annoyed and hurt the bald guy, so its other companions started attacking him, but he just knocked them down at the same time. And when the gold coins were given to him, Roxy suddenly came there. They thought that he was the one who started the trouble, but when Roxy found out that he was just defending himself, he was not punished. Instead, he was given a reminder to stay out of trouble if possible. When they were about to leave, Roxy noticed his torn outfit, and because of shame, Fate immediately left. While he was having trouble with his appearance, he was approached by the owner of the shop that he had asked earlier about the scabbard. He introduced himself as Jade Stratos, and found out what he did earlier to the other warriors. He was looking for someone who would wear the gear that he had created as an endorser of his items in store, and he wanted Fate to wear it. And since Fate also needed new clothes, he immediately agreed to Jade's offer. After putting the gear on him, he did not expect that Jade would still charge him for it. When he came out to the street, he saw the men who seemed excited about something. It turned out that it was because of a woman, and when she turned to Fate, Fate could not take his eyes off her. She approached him, and he was surprised that she was able to recognize him even though he was wearing a mask. This woman confessed that it was because they were alike, so Fate realized that she also had the skill of the deadly Shin. She introduced herself as Heiress of Lust, and she took him to a bar. He found out that she had been watching him for a long time since he was in the capital. Since she also knew greed, he also asked her if she and mine knew each other. She answered that she and mine did not talk much because she was a second generation. They also talked about the chimera that he and mine had defeated. But according to Eris, there were still few chimeras left that would definitely be a problem once they mature. Eris did not prolong their conversation, and she told him her purpose. She mentioned that she was also a guardian of the kingdom. It means that she would prioritize the welfare of the kingdom over others. If she knew of something or an event that could bring good for the future of the kingdom, she would support it. And one of them was Roxy's death in Gallia, which angered Fate. Eris explained the possible good things that could happen if Roxy died, but Fate did not care about it. Fate told her that it did not matter who planned this, or who he would fight against, because he would make sure to protect Roxy at all cost. The next day, Northern informed Roxy that they lost contact with the army that they sent to Gallia to collect raw materials. When Roxy found out that they were going to the Great Ravine, she prepared her army for the rescue operation. Meanwhile, Fate went to Jade to ask him to make a scabbard for greed, but according to Jade, he would need a magic crystal. But this material could only be found in Gallia, near the Great Ravine. When Roxy's group went to Gallia, they had a problem finding the Great Ravine because the compass did not work in the area. In this situation, they just waited for the orcs because they knew that wherever they came from was also the direction to the Great Ravine. The night when Fate took a rest, he dreamed of the woman who served as the core of the chimera that he and mine fought. She was saying something to him, but he could not hear her because of the noise. A few moments later, he was suddenly transferred to the place where he saw the monsters that he had killed, including Hato and the kidnapper. They pulled him to drown in blood, and that was when he woke up. At that time, there were some salamanders on attack, so Fate used the magic bow to target them. He noticed that there was something strange about the way the salamanders were acting, so he and Greed thought that they might just be controlled by someone. Roxy's group was also not far from Fate, and was currently being attacked by salamanders. They were quickly surrounded by fire, and when Miria tried to attack a salamander, it did not work. When the monster retaliated, Fate suddenly came there to block it. He used the sharp edge and was able to defeat all the salamanders. Fate asked them if they knew anything about the emblem on the head of the salamanders. Mugan was surprised that they all had the same emblem because he knew that the crowned beasts rarely worked together. Miria also noticed that these monsters were only targeting Roxy. So Fate went with Roxy's group because he also heading to the Great Ravine. When they arrived there, they parted ways because Roxy's group immediately left to start looking for the missing army. After several hours of searching for the magic crystal, Fate found Eris. She seemed to be watching something, and soon she also left. When he turned around, he was surprised to see the chimera, but it had no core. When he and Greed observed the area, they thought of the possibility that there were other chimeras who once placed there too. When Fate remembered Eris, there was a sudden explosion in the distance. Fate immediately went there because he knew that Roxy's group went there to do their search. It turned out that they were fighting the chimeras, and when Fate came there, he informed Roxy about the chimeras and its core that they should target. Since her other companions were already injured, Fate and Roxy worked together to deal with the enemies. While Fate focused on fighting the chimera, Roxy was told to attack the core. Only one chimera was left, but it jumped and caused the ground to collapse, then Fate and Roxy also fell. When they regained consciousness, Fate mentioned to Roxy other information about the chimera. He asked her about their rescue operation, but she sadly replied that they arrived too late. Their conversation returned to the chimera, and since Fate mentioned who told her about it, Roxy immediately knew that he was talking about Mine. He did not expect that she knew that he and Mine were together before, and he could not deny it anymore. Suddenly, one of his eyes turned red, so he quickly moved away from Roxy. He also smelled a monster nearby, and it turned out to be the chimera. But he quickly defeated it and noticed the emblem in the core that was also the same on what he saw from the salamanders. For this reason, he was sure that someone was really trying to kill Roxy. When Roxy went to him, something suddenly fell near them, and it turned out to be the magic crystal that Fate was looking for. After he got the magic crystal he needed, they also came out of it. A few days later, Roxy summoned Fate. It was related to the violence in which he was involved since they returned from the Great Ravine. He reasoned that he was not the one who started the trouble, but Roxy said that she could no longer overlook on any misunderstanding. In order for Fate to stay out of trouble, Roxy wanted him to join the royal army, which he immediately refused. Because of his answer, he was told that he had to pay for his sins in jail. So Fate was forced to fight, but he did not remove Greed's scabbard. At the beginning of their fight, Fate was just blocking her attacks. Until Roxy decided to aim for his mask. Because of this, he used the holy sword technique, which surprised Roxy because his weapon was not a holy sword. She also thought that he might used to be a member of the Holy Knight, but Fate quickly denied it. When he attacked, he pushed Roxy back, and he was about to attack again, when he saw the necklace that Roxy was wearing. Because of this, he lost his focus, causing him to be defeated in their fight. He was about to leave when Roxy asked him if he also underwent a training with Eren because of his fighting style. Eren also mentioned about the traveler with extreme powers, and this power was its burden too. And if Eren was referring to him, she would wanted to help him, but Fate just said that she needed to focus on protecting herself and Gallia instead. When Fate left, Mugan talked to him about the salamander and chimera because he also suspected that someone was really controlling them. Mugan added that he was able to arrive at his suspicion because their family had been studying Gallian technology for a long time, starting with his father and now with his daughter. On the other hand, Rain heard some information about what Raphael was currently doing. He locked himself in the room and was studying the Philosopher's Stone that he got in Tenburn. So Rain looked at her book, which contained information about it. Apart from being able to heal pain and wounds, it could also give power to the person holding it. While Fate was resting, he remembered what Mine had told him about the domain of E. This was the level of power that he must reach to defeat the divine dragon. Suddenly, he heard the sound of the siren signaling that monsters were approaching Babylon, and it was known as the Death March. Fate saw Roxy's group who were charging forward to face the monsters. He used the half-starvation mode and saw that something was following Roxy's army. Because of this, he used the magic bow to stop it before it could reach Roxy. It was forced to show itself, and it was a big slime monster. Fate was surprised to see that it also had an emblem. When he was about to approach it, it showered him with acid, and luckily, Greed immediately turned itself into a shield. After this, Fate immediately took advantage of the opportunity to attack it. It suddenly went under the ground because it was going to try to chase Roxy again. Fate quickly followed it, and when he attacked the slime, he noticed that someone hit it first. He successfully got its soul, but he was surprised because it was still alive. Then he saw a person above who was also wearing a perception-altering mask just like him. He thought it was Eris, so he immediately went up, and Greed recognized its weapon as the black gun sword Envy, which was one of the weapons of mortal sin. He was blocked by slimes, and when they swallowed him, he killed the slimes immediately. He attacked the enemy, but it did not work because this person created a barrier. For that reason, he used his sword, and that was when he found out that it was not Eris. When he retreated, his opponent showered him with bullets, but even though Fate had a magic shield, he was still hit by this attack. The enemy was about to finish him when he suddenly reached the domain of E. Fate got stronger and faster, so he was able to hit the opponent's mask. Then he found out that it was Northern, who immediately called the Divine Dragon to go to Roxy. Northern said that he and the Divine Dragon would do everything just to kill Roxy. When the Divine Dragon attacked Roxy, Fate managed to block it. It attacked again, and Fate's mask had been destroyed, causing Roxy to recognize him. So he apologized for lying to her, and then he left to face the Divine Dragon again. When he saw Northern, he used the Grand Cross returnable to the Divine Dragon. And that was the moment when he and Northern fought again. In this situation, Northern was confident that he was stronger than Fate because he learned that Fate used the secret art on the Divine Dragon. Soon he was able to injure Fate's left hand. When he was about to finish Fate, Northern was surprised when someone attacked him from behind. It turned out that the one in front of him was just an illusion, and he realized that Fate had just sacrificed one of his hands to trick him. After Fate killed Northern, he suddenly went to a dimension where the surroundings were all in white. He saw Haniel's core again, and this time, she introduced herself as Luna. She thanked him for ending her life. But she also apologized because there was nothing more that she could do for him. It was a moment when Fate found out that Luna was the reason why his gluttony skill was silent for a while. But Luna said that she could no longer provide support to him. She informed Fate that he would lose control of himself if he swallowed the Divine Dragon. When Fate fell, greed quickly grabbed him. Before they returned to reality, Fate thanked Luna for her warning, but he said that he would not just let the Divine Dragon be free without a master. When they returned to reality, the Divine Dragon was released from the secret art. Fate rushed at it and cut off its wings until it fell to the ground. It even tried to retaliate, but Fate did not waste the opportunity to end its life once and for all. But using too much power, his body gradually gave in due to the gluttony skill. He knew that he would not be able to control it, so he transferred all his stats to greed. After this, greed reached his level 4 form. Fate did this so that the damage that he would cause once he lose control of himself would not be too great. After a few moments, Mine came there to fulfill the promise she made to Fate. But when she did this, Roxy suddenly came there to push Fate. After saving him, Roxy begged him to stop what he was planning to himself, so Fate was surprised that the gluttony suddenly became silent. Then he realized that even though he always told himself that he wanted to save Roxy, it turned out that he actually wanted her to save him like she did to him before. But Fate could not handle the extreme fatigue, so he lost consciousness. When he woke up, Eris and Mine visited him, and it was here that he found out that he had been sleeping for a week. They were carrying greed which they had searched in the Gallia. Mine had been busy with envy that she forgot to take greed. She said that she was just worried that envy might find a new vessel like Northern. But since the weapon of mortal sin was also indestructible, she decided to just throw it away. Eris told Fate that they needed his help because he had already proven himself after defeating the Divine Dragon. She also informed that the plan on Roxy had been removed, and she added that Envy was the only one who planned it and she just tagged along. With the death of the Divine Dragon, the kingdom would enter a new era, so they had to prepare for what might happen next since this was exactly what the deadly sin skill wielders should do. Fate could not refuse it anymore, so Eris also said that they planned to return his hand. But at that moment, they had to get out of there before Roxy arrived because Eris knew her effect on the gluttony. So a few minutes later, when Roxy came there, she was surprised that Fate was gone. Fate left a letter to apologize to her, but he promised that he would come back. After reading this, Roxy once again remembered the day when she and Fate first met. The news immediately reached Raphael that the corpse that they were looking for was Fate. But Raphael seemed to be happy that Fate was the one who killed Hado. When Fate and the girls arrived at Gallia, they started to perform the ritual to repair Fate's hand. Using the secret art of greed's level 4 form, called Twilight Healing, Fate successfully returned his hand. This is the end of the last episode of Berserk of Gluttony and Season 1. I hope you like it and give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel so you won't miss new uploaded videos. Thank you for watching.